Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee and No Code. And we're continuing this session here around codeless architecture, which is, of course, future of all enterprise software. And this topic today, we've done the topics in the past of security, integration, bringing it all together, orchestration, and then deep dives into integration with Jordan, who led that, and Odile, who led the orchestration. The topic today is presentation. So it functions, codeless architecture. It looks great. It all brings all your legacy code together into one place, makes it all work. The question is, how does it actually look? So today I'm joined by Joe Cahill, and Joe is going to be walking us through that topic of presentation, which I'm going to be honest, Joe, like this is my weakest point. So when you used to get drawer screaming in Visual Basic, I was pretty good. There was no like maybe an image on the corner, like you'd put a little logo like Smith Barney, and it got a little like. But when the web started, and like I remember the days of CGI Perl and streaming back, TDs and TRs and call spans, and then the span came out, and everyone's like, "What the hell's a span?" And I still was pretty good in those '90s, early 2000s because all the sites look like crap, right? They all look like,
Absolutely.
and so, but your expertise in graphic design, I'm gonna let you do your bio in a second, but it is absolutely my weakest point of all because I've got no graphic capability. And like, I could wear a sweatshirt, that's good, and that's basically it. So Joe, if you could for the audience, do your intro. Tell us who you are, your background.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Joe Cahill. I'm an experienced design manager here at Unqork. Obviously, by my accent, born and raised in New York. But yeah, I've been doing design for
One
over
accent.
20
I don't hear an
years.
accent. What do you mean?
I don't hear an accent. People tell me I have an accent. I'm in San Francisco for the week, and everybody looks at me funny the second I open my mouth. Um, but yeah, it's been amazing over the last 20 years plus of doing design because, like you said, Gary, design for the web wasn't particularly great in the beginning. Everybody loves to talk about those good old GeoCity sites back in the
Yeah.
late 90s, early 2000s, and then we had that big push of Flash where it was like our first look of like interactivity and depth in design from a design and engineering standpoint, but it was super clunky. Like we had a 56K modem, and we would just sit there and just be like loading, loading. All right, 20%, it's on its way. So from me going in a graphic design background, I saw the web and I was like, oh, this is cool. How do we design for it? Like, how do we take what I'm doing in print design and put it there? And it was a big learning curve for not just me, but engineers and companies in general to kind of see where it all comes from. And that's where the evolution to how, like, what we're doing here at Unqork and in the no code platform really does take shape. I love saying I've been doing UX and user experience design before UX was a thing because no matter what we've been doing from a design perspective, it's always been keeping our users in mind. So as we iterate and create a lot of designs and design systems and no code snippets and the overall platform, it's how do we always keep that end user in mind by not only creating engaging design elements, but also usability and keeping accessibility in big focus. One of the beautiful things here at Unqork that we have is we have an allyship council that allows us to really drive home that method of building accessible experiences for everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
So
accessibility critical for all. I mean, the other thing is I was always on the receiving end as an engineer of like these beautiful designs from like Frog and IDEO and other agencies that are absolutely breathtaking, but have no ability to be implemented by the systems because the
yeah,
data is not there or the orchestration. So it's real. What I love what you're doing in Unqork is it's practical and it's real. And before we jump in, just level setting a bit. So design itself and what you're going to see Joe walk through here today. In a codeless architecture world, we've broken the design away from the actual schemas, the integrations, the orchestrations, the fields, the forms, the layout, every aspect of it. We've abstracted the design in a way. And again, technology in codeless architecture is all about abstraction and how high we could bring that abstraction. So to us, the question was, how high can we abstract that design? And you're going to see that today, such that you could change the design in a single place and every application and every device and everywhere it basically changes seamlessly. And the dream of that, I remember being in MetLife and I was global CIO, and there was a branding change coming. the fonts were changing, the colors are changing, Snoopy's going away. The amount of development work that went in to implement that branding change was years to basically make this work. And that's because design was hard coded in each single system, in every view, and every aspect of it. And there was no single design system. We're thrilled when we see some of our biggest customers today come to us and say, we built a design system. We already have it. We have the stored essential, the guidelines, it's all here. So to us, that's a great place to start. So Joe, I'm going to hand it off to you. Walk us through what you do and your job and the tools you use and actually how this works when you think about presentation within a codeless architecture and how it works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is we're going to walk through a bunch of fun stuff. And a lot of what we do is really branching that communication between designers. And for me, my days of being a developer are long past me. Once things started getting super, super complicated in React, I was like, I'm just going to focus on design.
I took a React class, that like I did a React class in one of those, truly one of the sites, the Coursera sites, but and it made total sense. But again, it looked like crap. That was the problem.
Yeah.
It was like the end result. Yeah.
And that's where, like, as I've messed around with it, like CSS, I could do all day. Like, that's easy. And now most of our software that we use does even generate the CSS for us, so that it makes it even better. But it's still that level of understanding. Like, I know how it works. And much like you said about building design systems, what we do here, especially when our client has a design system, it's good to kind of look at it, take it in, and we can easily build a flexible solution within Unqork because they already have it. So, but in some instances, we got to build it ourselves. And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at one main instance that we're recently doing for like an insurance demo. And it's even more fun as a graphic designer. I got to kind of build out a brand for us to use as like a demo, and we're going to do it. So let's take a look.
And that's a great point, Joe. Like, we don't exist in the world with our own brand. So there is no Unqork brand or look and feel or fonts. So how customers are using us and the audience watching this, they're probably already interacting with many Unqork sites without knowing it's Unqork, because what we guarantee the customers is pixel perfect view. This concept of we match and seamlessly go in. In the case here, I love this. So you created a fake company called Andor Insurance. I guess this is a life insurance company, so it's going to be really like sexy and exciting here, life insurance, which we know well.
Yeah.
And this is you built this as if you created the company. So this is, from scratch. This is a brand new brand of a use case. So let's go. Try it.
Yeah. So one of the funny parts about this, like you said, like, this is a fake company, and we are going to use it for our demos. And one of the things that we also did is to make it flexible and give it its own tone of voice. So we also have Andor Financial. And they have different tones, as you could easily see from the landing page. So I'm working in Figma, which is a UX design software. Really, really great. One of my favorite tools that I got to use to date. One of the main reasons is it's collaborative. So while I'm working with another designer, or we have, engagement managers or clients even looking in, like, they can kind of see what we're working on and get a good idea. And it's always good to easily comments. So if there's any changes, that we can easily just comment through, and it loads really easy, which is great for anybody who is a little on the older side and had to use some of those Adobe programs in the early 2000s, waiting for things to save. Saving is a thing of the past now with cloud computing. So, one of the things that we did do is, again, going from my old design background, was creating some basic branding. And when we work with engineers, because this is one of the first things that they get from a handoff as they build out modules, is to get an idea of how the brand colors look, what the brand colors are, building spectrums against them. So if we start building out like hover states, it's not like a percentage change, it's an actual hard number to it. So it gives us a lot more of a solid foundation of what we're doing. For me, typography is always one of my favorite things. So I love working with type. One of the things that we did move to was moving into a REM style typography. Versus using like very strict H1, H2 headers.
Yeah, I was going to say no more H1s and H2s. That's all I knew how to use was H1, H2, and of course H3, which you wouldn't
Yeah,
get.
and these things are great because it's for us, it gives very simple sizing around how we build out our experiences. So, you know, everything from those extra small to those we go all the way up to 9x, because as we build out marketing type stuff, like you know, I kind of want to build some big fonts and have it very, very standout-ish as we're building header spaces. And again, like having this all filtered through. So this is not only just our style guide, but it's also our component system. So we can easily quickly build things on the fly. So as we're building comps to show off to people, we can easily just grab and then have all the states also built into it. So they are fully rollover, fully hover, and they interact really well. You know, going into text fields, our navigation elements. And one of the things that you'll see, sometimes we get super granular. So in some of our instances, while we have our clients, they have alerts that pop up, letting the end user know that there's errors or there's warnings or there's new stuff or there's you know, fun new experiences that they need to look out for. So building in alerts. And then one of my favorites, data viz. You know, we work with building out some really great data visualizations, which you'll see as we build out the when I go through the dashboard itself. But really also looking into how we present the work, making sure everything's labeled correctly, and again, going into that accessible realm of looking into how the color spectrum of the items that are on there. So we have all sorts of different charts. And
that's really cool. I like, and Joe, one of the benefits of Codeless Architecture is, like, I remember the days when I would be as an engineer waiting each day for the design work to come in. Like the project would be on hold. Okay, we're building a new consumer trading site. Okay, designs are going to come in tomorrow. No, it's going to be next day. And your work is basically stopped because you can't start coding. You can't start the actual development because it's going to change drastically once the designs come in. You might be able to do the APIs and the database, but in Unqork, like they're able to start. Codeless Architecture would say the design and presentation is separate and distinct, and you could swap it out without any impact to any application, which means start with the default, start with the brand, start without this, and automatically this will come later. So it doesn't slow down your time to market, which I think is one of the coolest things, is just get going. And by the way, the name Andor, I didn't think of this till now, Joe, but like, you know, with Codeless Architecture, what we always say is it's not about, you know, or, it's about and. It's, you know, it's bringing everything together. So it's not us versus something else. It's us and something else versus or. I love the name. I'm like, now we got to use the name somewhere. Like, that's a good name.
It's become a bunch of different things. It's also a fun little hidden Easter egg because I am a huge nerd. It's a name of a character from Star Wars. From Rogue
okay,
One.
so that's where. Oh, I thought you were watching all my other videos, and I figured you got it from there, but instead it's Star Wars. I love it.
It has great, and that's the thing. It's one of those words. It's flexible. It's like, you know, a client can get this and or that. So it's fun. It's built into these 1,000 different ways of interpreting it. And as we go through the demo, you're going to see some familiar names, because as much as I love using lorem ipsum for things, we do have to give names. So there are some deep cuts from the Marvel universe and some other types.
Good point. There's no real names or date of births or anything shown in this video. So that's pretty clear. Yes. We understand PII. At Unqork, we understand privacy very well. So,
this is all Joe-generated content. So with all this stuff up front, right, we develop all these designs and come up with all the components, which again can go right to like a styling person early on as we start building it out. So then all of the colors are in, the components are built, and the overall style is established. We can go in and then start bringing it to life within the Unqork platform. So again, we're staying within in Figma here. As I build stuff out. So as you can see on the left, this is a very expansive app. So we have everything from a D2C site, so like for the consumer. So like if you were hypothetically looking for insurance, you would come to this site from like the main URL, to agent-led apps, portals for agents and customers, a full-on workbench that allows the end user to have access to pretty much everything. And as we go through it, you're going to see that each one of these pages have a lot of information behind it. But going into that what Gary said before about the flexibility, so you're going to see a whole app that's built around different types of styles. So this is to the consumer. So when it comes to the overall consumer, we want to make sure we build something engaging that is, for lack of a better term, very pretty, very markety, something that has, a really nice use of image and illustration, and some of the things that were in that style guide, and bringing that to life here versus the regular dashboard stuff. So the flexibility around it is all established. And then we kind of go right into a flow where we, talking about the user, right? Creating that experience where as they go through, we have a simple navigation that a user can look at. They understand where they are. They have an on-running like cost saving estimate, and understanding where they need to go. Making sure also one of the key things is that UX writing. Like as we were establishing all this, and as much as I joke around as Joe generated content, making sure that from this aspect, making sure everything we have here is very uplifting and actionable and doesn't seem too weighty, that the overall user can get into it. So like there is a dual role here of building experiences, not just from the pretty, but from the functional. And this is a lot of what we do when we meet with our clients, is talking them through, what can they do and what are they looking for, and what from an overall user experience, like what their goals are and what their current clients or users pain points are. And I think it's a very important kind of conversation to have, because I'm sure we've all been to websites that look really nice, and then you're kind of clicking around and you're like,
what's next? What's
like
yeah, you left wondering. That's it's interesting, because like in insurance, like what Joe's showing you today is based on real production systems that we've seen in action. And this isn't theoretical in like, even though we made up the company and the content and the concept, this is an e-app. It's called e-app is electronic application. And it's in life insurance, it's in P&C insurance, it's in annuities. And the whole concept of enrollment is in banking. But this is a very common use case for us. So is Underwriter Workbench. So
yeah.
The Underwriter Workbench is a single workbench across all of insurance products, multi-product, like it's not simple. This isn't just case management as you would think through it. And it is complex. And that's, this is another production example that we repeatedly see across all different customers and all lines. And the UI and portal, of course, goes without saying, is we are doing that across the board. That's something which is, so I like your examples here. Could you zoom in a little bit? Is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, like what you said, is making sure this is all out of the box, right? Making sure this all works without being overcomplicated. So much like to how those agencies hit you up earlier in your career, I do the same thing to our poor developers. I'm like, hey, I'd love to do this. And they're just like, why?
But it goes back to a TD and TR. We've got those.
Yeah. And it's always making sure that we can push the platform as far as we can, because we would love to make sure that like our clients and our end users, anybody who wants to develop for Unqork, can really, really push it and make sure they have a library of information that they can just like.
Have you, Joe? Like, so something there's always the myths, and so one of the myths I've heard, which is there's no way you could implement my design in Unqork codeless. There's no way you could do no code with my design, and like, have you come across those challenges? And like, I would probably say 90% of the time, like it's able to be done. I would say probably I'm going to be probably 10% of the time there's some crazy idea, but just tell me what you think. What's your numbers?
I would say it's definitely up there. I would love to say I definitely try to push it as much as I can. And it's nothing that it's too, I get a lot of like stuff through. Like I get a lot of like the really crazy ideas through. I think it's when I really start to push my own, things I see online that that are not part of a dashboard, that are part of like more of a marketing site. And I'm like, oh, let's do this. And then a developer's like, well, we have to like really like start loading in a bunch of JavaScripts for that. And I'm like, oh yeah, because you don't want it, because once you start loading those JavaScripts, like it's going to slow down the entire app, and you don't want that. We've all kind of seen sites that like I've seen big companies, I've worked for big companies that have like had these sites, and I'm like, why is this so slow? And they're like, oh well, we're
Yeah,
running like we had
it's
to
got a
put in support.
700K JavaScript library with
Yeah,
carousels coming in of images that are loaded. I've seen it all. I know that.
yeah.
Yes.
So I love
Yeah.
finding solutions in CSS. That's my always my go-to. And when I find those solutions, we usually get them in. I will say a lot of our predetermined pieces within Unqork already have some great animations and some great interactivity, which when we're done walking through this, we're going to go and see what it looks like live. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. But one of the things that I don't know, I don't know where he's probably looking around, but this is one of our engineers looking at the designs right now. So he is currently in one of the files. So it's always good. This is the collaboration part. So this is where,
And
as
you're
a team,
using,
especially a
you could
remote team.
use any design tool, right? So we've seen all the different design tools used. Again, my day would have been Dreamweaver, and
Oh,
Adobe,
Dreamweaver.
but yeah, Macromedia. So in your case here, we're using Figma, which we use ourselves, right? Our clients use it, we use it. It's one of the core choices, and it works. It works
Yeah.
very well for what it does. I don't want to pitch Figma, but I'm pitching Figma, I guess, here, which is good.
Well,
So
it's that's the thing, right? It's like any evolution. Like as every version of React or Node or a different platform comes out, you know, we grow with it. So much like how back in the day, I used to do web design in Photoshop and Illustrator,
right.
which poor developers on that end would just get a flattened JPEG and be like, "All right, guys, tell me when it's done," and they would be none too happy. I'm sure I get. There's still some developers that are out there that are like, "Yo, you're never gonna forget. I had this guy. He sent me these flat Photoshop
I've
files,
received
or
those.
yeah, or a PDF." But now it's like these tools make it easy for us to hand things off. So one of without going too far out of the realm, but Figma has an inspect tool. So you can easily click on any item that's here and get all the information about it. So it'll get like that type style. So this is a 4XL and it has all the sizing and the line height and the colors. And then you could pull the CSS if needed. And if this was, handing off, you could just copy the text right out too. So if this is something a little more in depth, and it's like, especially on the marketing side, like for that D2C page, for a developer to pull in all that content, it's easy just to copy and paste it. So it makes it super easy. And again, like we've used tools, so many. Like right before this, there was Sketch, which was a great application. It just didn't do certain parts, and that's where Figma came in. They're like, "Oh, you guys want to collaborate together online? Cool, let's do it. You want copywriters to come in and do it? Yeah, we could do that." But Adobe's always creeping in the back with Adobe XD. I use it here and there. I think with this, it's primarily an industry standard that's moved to Figma being the big one. But looking at this whole app in general, like you said, Gary, it's like, trying to make sure that we're building something that makes sense, building something that is engaging, right? And these apps are not tiny. So like everything from this Workbench is we have 3 separate personas that are involved. I built this in for like the prototype for like our the people I work with, just to see how they can click in. So we have 3 main personas that we're driving experience for. Each one of them get their own dashboard with their own type of tools and information. So I ended up building out all 3. So this is for Mark Spector, for anybody who is a big Moon Knight fan. This is Mary Watson, anybody who's a Spider-Man fan, and Vanessa
We know we
Carlisle.
have Star Wars friends.
Yeah, anybody
we
who
know we
watched
got the Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
That's
we have,
awesome.
like I said, just trying to generate as much as we can, and it's also kind of fun creating these people, but giving them all their spaces, right? Like making sure their data is different, making sure they have different tools. Like for Mark, he's the overall manager, so making sure that he can manage his team, and this is to manage my team. Like it's for these viewing my performance from an underwriter's perspective, and then having a global search for the content manager. So it's like having all of these things thought out, because as we build out the tools, we want to make sure that we have everything, like cross all the I's and dot all the T's set up. And then, from here, these are some fun forms. Like for me, people always say, building dashboards isn't technically a fun job. And I'm like, why? It's not, just isn't glamorous work. Yeah, this isn't Spotify, right? Like, but this is intelligent work. This is us thinking through a user's like what they're expecting and how they're going to engage with it, and how we can make it, as easy to digest as possible, especially when we're going through all this. We've all been through these types of forms where, yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot of stuff. So like, how do you combat, this long list of things, checkboxes that they have to go through? And one of the ways we did it, collapsible menus. So everything will start off fully collapsed, and they open them up. Once one is completed, the next one opens up right away. So it's a little bit of that logic that's involved for us to really build an experience that makes sense for our users. So yeah.
I like this, and I think the standard, not just the Marvel characters, but I think the Star Wars entities and the reference there. I like, John, I love the comments there. Endor versus Andor. I love it. I think, Joe, you've got that one down pat, and I guess.
Oh yeah,
it's awesome.
Ironically, while I'm in San Francisco, we are going to go visit the Redwoods where Return of the Jedi was filmed. I did not bring any type of Star Wars gear to recreate anything, but it's also, you need to see nature while we're around.
That's awesome.
And again, for a lot of this also is creating that interactivity, right? Like, so as we build out these apps, we want to validate that parts work. So we have things like pop-up windows that work, that are all clickable. So as we run through the app, we have all these pieces together. One of the pieces that, again, we're looking at is each user. So this is for a customer. This is like, for me, if I was going to log in and look at all my stuff. So it was trying to make it a little more warm and fun, and like bring in the illustrations that we had as part of the design system, bringing in a lot more.
Yeah, and you starting back with what you said, there's multiple roles. You said that you had the characters from Deadpool and, of course, Spider-Man, and each of them had a different role, a different set of data they're seeing, which we define in Unqork and roles, right? So we have separated roles and groups and users all separately defined. So you could attach this to those roles. They could see their view without code, right? That's the trick. Yeah. Again, you could code it. It would take a lot of work, but you could say, and I've done it, you could say, hey, if you come in with this role, show this different widget, show this different data, and keep it all in a single page, which everyone dreams of, that single page. And then what happens is it changes and becomes so massive, it's hard to support. It's hard to change. It's hard to rebrand. That gets back to the removing Snoopy from MetLife. It's just impossible to actually change. So I like the way you actually did that clear, and just the separation there is amazing from that. It's our own rebellion, I guess, here going on. This is cool. This is and the other thing is, like, so Figma, we've seen recently, like, AWS reInvent threw out a way to basically show how Figma could export to React in SageMaker and use AWS to do that. It's still code. Right, it was still absolutely hard coding React, and what happens when React goes on the end of life? You've got these insane budget on the, end of life legacy tech debt coming. So it's still code. In our world, like there, it's a very different codeless architecture view, which is we could potentially export from Figma directly into our designs. And I think we're going to be playing with that later this year, just trying to figure out that the interactions and how maybe even a Figma separation could be maintained there versus even an Unqork Drive, which is very cool. I like the definition of abstraction.
That would make it so much fun for me to kind of not worry about learning how to code too much.
Yeah, you don't have to hand that off to the developers then. That's pretty cool. Designers step in. That's it, and take on more.
And that's where, for a lot of no-code platforms, there's that lack of it, right? There's that lack of being able to design. There's so many, even when I'm looking at design portfolios, everybody's working in like 3 different no-code design softwares, and they all kind of look the same because there's not as much flexibility. While like what we're trying to do here is always constantly maintain a look forward of how we're going to push the platform, right? And how we're going to create, once we get to a certain point, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? I think
I love it.
Healthy. And that's for, like you're saying, like tech debt. I've worked for a lot of big financial companies that I would find out about their tech debt, and then I would hear about what they're working on. And I'm like, oh man, like can we do that now? They're just like, no, we have to get these things done first. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. And then like, I find out from a design perspective, there's design debt of things that people have ideas to push through.
I've never heard the word design debt. I like that.
Oh yeah, we always have a backlog of some kind of design idea or implementation that it's not right now thing. It's so
I
for a
like
lot of
design
people.
dead. We're gonna have to use that. That's gonna be my new word, design dead. I haven't
I
seen
was
that
the
word
first never to have design dead.
yet. Yeah. I
But
like
look,
that's
no,
great.
but
So
yeah,
so Joe, let's show us. Can we jump in and say, okay, this is you working within your tool set. This is how you think through. We have an entire practice that helps customers think through their designs in UX and CX. A lot of times you're working hand in hand with the customer's own design team, right? Or as I mentioned, in two cases we worked with Frog and IDEO directly,
yeah.
right? Because the customer hired them and said they're going to be the ones doing design. So you've got the designs here in Figma. Like, what happens next? What's
So
the steps?
while all this is going on, our teams are always working together. So I'm working with UX engineers, I'm working with solutions architects, people who are working in config to get the data models and data dictionaries set up correctly. And because we all want everything to run in a linear path, if when we work with some clients, we get the ability to do some UX research, which is awesome. So we have the ability to start identifying the user and what their problems are so we can really deep dive in this, because for some companies that go, really engineering first and don't really validate, they end up like coming up with experiences and then it goes to like the end user. And then there's a lot of feedback that's like, this doesn't work, or this, and it's not even just functionality, it's just flow. So then it ends up coming back to like refactoring code and building more Jira tickets around how they're going to fix experiences. So while we're all working in tandem to get this moving forward, each piece of the Unqork team is putting their part of the puzzle together, which I think is always really fun because we work at high velocity agile, so it's making sure that we get everything wrapped and thought out and completed, and we can always constantly identify things that need to be adjusted. One of the things that we recently came up with was how we're going to display the data for like this page in my book, and how their cases and the Inforce is going to work together. Like, how's the data going to come in? Like, how is it going to, do we show, my thing was I wanted to show what the segment was, what was in there, and the percentage. And then they were like, okay, let's build out that snippet. And we found like different ways that, that making sure how the data comes in and making sure the data fits. And I think that's part of that iteration process that constantly goes on. Like you said before, like things that I love to bring in that, that always try to torment an engineer in the best way possible.
It doesn't change in the no code world. I'm glad to hear that. In the no code world, that still happens.
When I
That's
built
good.
the Figma originally, they had this thing called Smart Animate. So as you click through each one, I have things like kind of entering the screen a little differently. And they were like, like it should be a lot simpler. We have them preset a certain way. And I was like, okay. It's always good. Like it's you always like to take the big swing and see where it always lands out. But I think it's always
I remember the release that we announced this week with the new features, dynamic grid, uniform grid, freeform grid, all these, like literally you could build equivalent of sheets in many cases in Onetime now as the platform.
Yeah.
Like you've got and that was because the common feedback from the users, I always hated this one. The user would say, I want to work in Unqork as easy as it is to work in Excel sheets and Excel cells and type right in. I want millions of rows of data, click anywhere, edit, but I want you to fire the validations and I want you to fire the rules. And that was, and in the beginning, the first few years, I was part of the negotiation to get them off of that conversation, which was, how do you talk them down from there and get them to a place where we're giving you controls and use, but it's not exactly as easy as typing into a sheet or Excel. And with the release yesterday, it is now as easy. So now that's the newest feature, which is millions of rows, click anywhere, edit anywhere, pivot, drive. Like that to me is, UX. I guess you would have said that was designed back then, which was there was a business requirement to do something, which we understood. We didn't have the capability yet, and now we do. And so the design that gets cleaned up. I like the word. I'm going to keep using it. That's cool. That's good. So Joe, jump in. Can you show us what this would be in Unqork? Show us the equivalent screen. Let's see how close it is.
Let's make sure that this pops up. So this is actually this is that agent dashboard in Unqork. So see that little animation? That I was super amped to see that in there. So this is what we ended up as we were developing everything out and putting it all together, and then it comes to life. And this is where it's, for me specifically, I love seeing this, because then I get like super into it's like anything else. This is back even when I was a graphic designer. I would see like my work in like an ad in Times Square, and I'd be like, oh my God, that's me. And I, it's still the same way. I still get this excited when we build out regular websites and any experience, because it's cool seeing like the vision come to life. And again, like with as little friction as possible. I think our team has been super into this project for a lot of different reasons. And I think one of the main things is seeing that final output and seeing it come to life. So, these are some of those little interactions that are a little quantifiable from the design standards that we have here at Unqork. So this is all predetermined. So when I knew these were already here, I got really excited, because then I already had a bunch of data viz interactions kind of set up. But these are already out of the box. They have, we have some nice rollover effects, and this feels like a one-to-one experience from what we come up with from the design side and how it kind of lives within the overall in Unqork in general. So again, like going through everything from.
I like the animations, by the way. So I think you pushed that well. That was good. I haven't seen that
before. Oh, I luckily didn't have to push anything. These were already here. Like it's always that happy surprise that we have as a designer when we come to work in a platform that already has things that are in our sandbox, right? Like much like as we want to push and drive and build things, like when we have some predetermined items, it is absolutely dynamite. And one of the things that we also wanted to do here was like making sure that our styling goes deep, right? Like for our date picker, it pulls in the same fonts and colors and all this stuff. So there's consistency within everything. We went to like a lot more of a material design form field to kind of differentiate it from every other type of, style that's out there.
But I mean, just Joe, to explain that further, like, so we have in Codeless Architecture, there's a single JSON document with the customer's IP. It's all defined. The navigation, the workflows, the rules, the APIs, the integrations, the fields, the data, all the data collection, all the CRUD aspects of changing and removing and et cetera of data, that's all separate. And then what you did here was Unqork then says, we have our own design guide. Right, so we have an Unqork design guide, and you simply have to do a one-time mapping. So what you did was your Andor company, so your Star Wars-based life insurance company. That actually sounds pretty good. So your Andor company actually drove the design, and it's that one-time mapping. And as soon as you do that one-time mapping, every app you create using that JSON-based Codeless architecture, even if it's coming from another system, like technically. Right now, someone could reverse, even from a mainframe system, into our Codeless architecture standard and load it, and it would look like this. It wouldn't be a green screen application. It would actually inherit all of your designs, et cetera, magically out of. That's kind of what this is. That's just bridging it back to Codeless architecture, the connection there. Like the data is being graphed, it's being pulled in from APIs, it's being charted, it's interactive, you could change it. Right, so there'll be screens you could actually jump in and file claims and change with those text boxes you showed. So that's really what the process is, right? That's the combination of what you bring to the table with you and your team in driving this.
I think it's also very, very like eye-opening for me too to figure out that once, because when I build a single marketing page, like that CSS that's going to be part of that's in the upfront of the entire design is going to radiate through the 15, 20 page site that you're building. But when you come to this, and then I realized like how many flows we had, that one set of systems really is so easily implemented across all of them. Like I was like, I'm like, this isn't individual for each one. They're like, no, we kind of we do it once, and then it's like
I mean, I would even say, like, if I worked at Ender, I would say I'm building in Unqork internal systems. Like maybe I'm using it for HR compensation, or I'm using it for onboarding employees, or I'm doing internal work. Why not? It would look as pretty.
Yeah.
Because the internal systems always look like crap. They always look depressing and like from 1990s. And like, here there's no extra work, and it could actually take on the same look as the external systems do. Instead of separating the two, there's always been a separation of those two when I've been in corporate world.
I have a couple of friends that work internal tools, and they love showing the before and after because, like, we're designers. We love showing off our work, especially to each other, because it's so interesting to see how the problems, like not even just the problems get solved from a UX perspective, but how you can easily apply a set style to one element and it just cascades out. And I think one of the big things that's happened in design and engineering in the last, like 10 years or more is building reusable components, like building things that are flexible, like the whole design system, like building in a design system for a company is all about flexibility and building component libraries, and that's what we get to do here, making sure we reuse as much as possible, because it also builds like a consistency from an experience standpoint, that we're not like, it's not janky, right? Like a user's not going to go from page to page and be like, oh, why is this like this now? Like, and one of the things you said on the top, which it's funny because when I first started working here, I only started working here in October. A couple of the things I found in like the company Figma as I was going through and learning about like the company on my first couple of days were things that I've actually interacted with. And I was like, oh, this is Unqork? Like, we did this? And it really is like in a very.
Did you get married in New York City by any chance? One of us? No.
No.
We are. It's funny because sometimes we go up in design, down, we match the design, good or bad. We match the design, so you're seamless, and but it is great. I had a call with someone yesterday who said he just purchased insurance from one of our clients, and of course I asked the experience. I'm like, how was it? How smooth? No issues? Loved it. Fast. He congratulated us. So good job. The design's there. That's it.
Look at you. You do a little UX research on the side.
I do UX research.
User insights.
I always, it's about delighting the customers. That's what it comes down to, is like our product should be able to enable others to be delighted and delight their customers and see that and know that. So it's got to perform, it's got to be secure and scalable, and all that's out of the box. But it's got to look good. I mean, it's got to look good, be easy to maintain. And that's really where this comes in. And I love your designs. It's really cool. It's very cool. I know this is the longest LinkedIn Live, Joe, we went, and
oh, really?
This was fun. Yeah, no, this is a lot of fun. We can keep going. We can definitely.
I could talk all day.
I am a big Star Wars fan, by the way, so we can keep. Just couldn't keep up with you guys, but I definitely am. I was standing on the road for Star Wars 6, I guess it was, probably 12 years old, when someone drove by and told me Yoda dies. I never will forget that scene, because I was waiting for hours to see that movie, and God, I didn't know that was going to happen. And that was
it's one of those things. It's like, as a kid, you're like, hold on, what? Is that really what happens? Or is that person just being like, just doing things just to do things, right? Like, even now, that whole thing is just a whole different story we can go on about how people now, like when they walk out of a movie theater, like they know not to talk about it because they see other people online, and maybe just give like that, like as you're walking by, be like, and like you, like it's a nod of approval, like you're in for it, like when you come to it.
I love it. I got to say, like, I'm going to do another plug, which is I took my son to see the new Spider-Man in the IPIC Theater in Fulton Street downtown, which I've never done anything like that before. You literally could sit down in a, it's like your own little booth with a restaurant watching the movie, and they bring you food. And like, I wouldn't leave there if I was a kid. I would just want to stay there. So that's cool.
The floors that were sticky from the soda from all day, and the seats that were so uncomfortable, that's why you're fully paying attention to a movie. Now I go to these reclining seats, and I'm just like, I can't wait. I'm going to see Batman. It's 3 hours long. I'm like an hour and a half in.
That's awesome. I love it. So, Joe, thank you again. Have a good time in San Francisco. Come back to us soon. So So, and don't lose the accent is what I would say. And thanks everyone, Joe. Thanks for joining. Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode, Coffee and No Code. So this is awesome. Thank you, Joe. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.